Both tyrants were hypocrites. They were guilty of pedophilia, incest, polygamy, and rape, yet they condemned such behavior in others.
Mein Kampf, 346. There is no liberty to sin. Our entire public life today resembles a hothouse of sexual stimulants.
There may have been a method to their madness. An editor's note says, communism was hedonistic at its core. A good many sound Germans turned to Hitlerism because they could not stomach communist approval for free contraceptives, aid to unmarried lovers, and unrestricted sex.
Mein Kampf, 348. Our culture must be cleaned up, and we must fight against these evils, or we will lose sight of God and insult the All-Highest.
Mohammed incorporated Qusay's pagan rites into Islam.
Ishaq. Qusay's authority among the Quraysh was like a religion which the people followed and which could not be infringed. They acted in accordance with its laws. He took for himself the mosque or place of prostration of the Kaaba.
Hitler agreed with his strategy.
Mein Kampf, 356. The more wretched and miserable a new institution is, the more it will endeavor to extinguish the last traces of past times, whereas a really valuable renovation must include the good achievements of past generations. 357. Superior revolutionary movements will embrace the old forms
of ritual and dogma.
Only when the rays of the sun are gone is the moon able to shine.
Satan is consistent, if nothing else.
Any new idea, new doctrine, or new view of life which tries to deny the past or wants to deride it, making it valueless and untrustworthy, will fail.
Ishaq. Allah's apostle said, whatever deal there was in the days of ignorance, Islam strengthens it.
The first Muslims were comfortable with Islam, trusting it because in practice it was no different than Qusay's mystic scheme.
Tabari. Qusay's commands were never disobeyed. As regards the Hajj, he confirmed the rights of Arabs to continue their previous customs. He considered these to be a religious duty which should not change.
Mein Kampf, 358. The reason men hate new moons is either their inferiority or evil intent. A genuinely blissful renovation builds upon the place the last foundation ends. It isn't a shame to use existing truths. The new building stone should not wreck the old building, but rather take away unsuitable stuff which was badly fitted and then add on to that spot.
Muhammad's three branches of builders, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, comes to mind. Islam is the perfect embodiment of Hitler's mantra. It was built on Judeo-Christian foundations, for the reason Der Fuhrer specifies, to make it appear trustworthy. Hitler explains why Muhammad had to change his Qibla to the Kaaba.
Mein Kampf, 364. Our cities lack the outstanding symbol of national community. The lack of such a symbol leads to spiritual dullness, which manifests itself in indifference.
Der Prophet coveted the revenue streams that flowed from the Kaaba Inc. In the second surah, he used the pagan shrine to justify mass murder and kidnapping for ransom. He used it to transform his people's spiritual dullness and indifference into violent rage.
Koran 2, verse 217. They ask you about war and fighting, but a greater sin is to hinder people from Allah's cause and to bar access to the holy mosque, and to turn people out of its precincts. Oppression is worse than killing.
Despots require uniformity of purpose.
Mein Kampf, 364. The symptoms of decay include the lack of a commonly acknowledged view of life,
Hitler's code words for religion,
and uncertainty in the judgment and attitude towards the various great questions.
You'll note that Hitler is not suggesting that Nazis ask questions, but rather that they all agree with his answers.
Therefore, everything beginning with education is half-hearted and wavering, shuns responsibility, and ends thus in cowardly tolerance of recognized evils.
This synthesizes the 3rd and 33rd surahs. The recognized evil was Jews. Muslims were taught to hate them. They were told that anyone who didn't agree with Mohammed's interpretation couldn't be tolerated. Anyone who accommodated Jews and lived peaceably with them was a hypocrite. Mohammed, during the battles of Uhud and the Trench, was afraid that his world was about to implode. His followers were beginning to think for themselves. They were questioning the righteousness of a religion based upon terror and booty.
They were thinking vain thoughts about Allah.
So the Medina surahs established what Der Fuhrer suggested.
Mein Kampf, 364. Uniform religious convictions through a view of life are required.
Hitler even acknowledged the superiority of Islam in this regard.
Mein Kampf, 365. While the Catholic and Protestant denominations build missions abroad in order to lead new followers to the doctrine, an activity which, compared with the advance of Muhammad's faith, can show only very modest successes, in Europe they lose millions of adherents who now face religious life on their own. The consequence is unfavorable.
Hitler recognized that Mohammed didn't tolerate renegades, and that the sword of Islam was wielded above the necks of those who contemplated independence or freedom. Der Fuhrer and Der Prophet saw religion as their ultimate weapon. Without it, there was no possible way to acquire the power, wealth, and praise they craved. Hitler warned that Religitech founders had to be careful not to completely destroy what they were attacking.
Mein Kampf, 365. The violent fight against the dogmatic fundamentals of the various churches must recognize that without them, the practical existence of a religious faith is unthinkable to man. The masses of people do not consist of philosophers, and faith for them is their sole basis for a moral view of life. The various substitutes have not proved useful in exchange for former religious creeds.
So in Hitler's twisted mind, a new creed was necessary, his creed. Without it, he knew that there would be chaos in the wake of his attack on Christianity. While chaos abroad was supported by both Islam and Nazism, it's untidy at home.
But if religious doctrine and faith are really meant to seize the great masses, then the absolute authority of the contents of this faith must become the basis of all effectiveness. The dogma of the religion or the spiritual idea must be limited and brought into shape without wavering, or it will never become a faith.
Hitler is explaining that the purpose of the Religitechs derived from Mein Kampf and the Koran Sunnah were to establish absolute authority. Allah says,
in Quran 59, verse 6, Allah gives authority to His apostle over whoever He pleases.
This hadith established Islam's absolute authority and explains why the Pelagius doctrine was allergic to democracy.
Bukhari, I heard Allah's apostle saying, "We are the last, but we will be the foremost to enter paradise." The prophet added, "He who obeys me obeys Allah, and he who disobeys me disobeys Allah. He who obeys the chief obeys me, and he who disobeys the chief disobeys me. The imam is like a shelter, for whose safety Muslims should fight and seek protection."
George Bush should have read this hadith before he spilled American blood in pursuit of an impossible goal, establishing a democracy in Iraq without dealing with Islam first. When our politicians are ignorant and act impulsively without thinking, bad things happen. Mein Kampf says that if an old religion doesn't concentrate authority on a single man, then a new religion is needed.
Mein Kampf, 366. The value of an existing religion to a politician must be decided less by its deficiencies than by the presence of a visibly better substitute. As long as there is no apparent substitute, the existing religion can be demolished only by fools or by criminals.
Mohammed and Hitler attacked Judeo-Christianity because they believed their religion was a superior substitute, in that it was designed to empower their personal ambitions. Their Religitechs were control mechanisms. Submit and obey is hardly a vague command. The translators of Mein Kampf said Hitler attempted to make himself the prophet of the new German religion. He believed that if a new myth could be created and propagated as stubbornly, it would give Germans a new faith, which the masses would cherish as tenaciously as they previously followed Christianity. So, like Islam, Nazism was a replacement or substitute religion. These doctrines are different sides of the same coin.